Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. Today is D-Day. The Forester is either gonna start and run or it's gonna blow up. So Steve just pulled in with his friend Daniel, who's gonna help out with the Haltech ins and outs. So let's go over to the other garage where the Forester is and cross our fingers, hope it starts. Okay, in this clip we are cranking the car over without the fuel pumps hooked up to prime oil pressure, and I'm looking at my gauge internally to make sure we have at least some oil pressure prior to starting, since we didn't have a primer on the engine. Sometimes we'll take apart the feed line on the turbo and make sure oil's coming out. But we decided to crank it over a bunch of times first just to make sure everything was working right in the Haltech too. Okay, now we are getting the car to start, but it doesn't sound right. It has kind of a low rumble. It sounds like something is off. And it also seems to be fighting itself a little bit while cranking. So we realized that when we set the Haltech up and said that it was a 4-cylinder, it defaults to the firing order of an inline 4-cylinder, which is 1, 3, 4, 2. But Subaru, being flat motor, needs to be 1, 3, 2, 4. So once we switch that firing order, it immediately fired up a lot easier without needing any extra fuel to turn over, and then it sounded like it should have been. In this clip, we're trying to tie the pump gas and ethanol maps together. There's a scalar table which tells you what percentage of each map you're going to use based on the voltage that the flex fuel sensor sees. This logic in Haltech is different than Carberry and some other tuning softwares that Steve has used before, so we're just kind of figuring out what Haltech likes to see and getting the scalar properly calibrated. The car doesn't have pure pump gas in it, so it's actually at E18 right now, so it does need to use a small percentage of the flex map. We were able to get that figured out pretty easily. Haltech's help feature on the NSP software walks you through everything, and it looks just like the tuning map, so it's pretty helpful. Drive-by-wire motor, positive and negative, is B25 and B26.
But that's to drive the motor, right? That's not to actually read the position. Does it actually sense position, or does it just command a position?
Throttle position sensor.
There we go.
C18 and C29.
A14?
A14 is fuel pressure.
Oh!
Look at that!
So can I click assign?
Yeah, and you just pick. So you need to do. So there's TPS 1 and 2. So TPS 1 is C18.
C18?
Here's the weird part, but A14 was originally map, right? So why is it different?
A14 was originally MAF, but we
MAF.
don't use a MAF. So what we did was we used those wires to power the fuel pressure sensor because we ran out of inputs, and that's speed density. Yeah, so...
C what? 18?
Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, look up A16. There you go. That should be TPS 1.
Why is this saying AV12? Oh, wait, A16. Here we go.
That's just the input type.
Yeah.
Voltage
So-
input too.
Double click this.
Yep, I'm signed.
It is in conflict with drive-by-wire TPS1 input.
TPS 2 is A17.
So, all right. So hold on. Let me look at this. DBW.
He's getting you on camera, not knowing what the fuck you're doing.
That's perfectly fine. This is in the B's.
Drive-by-wire motor negative should be B25. Positive should be B26.
Oh, look, those are set up correctly. One and two are 16 and 17. That's correct.
All right.
For TPS,
Yeah.
should be 16 and 17.
But
yeah.
why am I getting an error on it though? I don't understand.
Is it because we've tried to turn it on
Should we?
in the TPS separately?
Can we try and calibrate it?
Unless it cracks it at 20% for idle.
Well, it is. Yeah, it is. Engine. So that's out. Technically, I guess that's output. I don't know. Engine function, spark alarm, calibration, throttle.
The throttle body's so big that there's a chance that the blade is hitting this intercooler pipe.
Okay. Oh, that's on there.
Yeah, I mean the thing's all the way back here, and I made a note that if this was to here, it shouldn't hit, but it's really far back now, so we can check it again and see if it changes the voltage. Otherwise, it just might be a weird.
Imagine.
I did think about that when I was putting the pipe in, which I made a mental note, but. That's weird. No one ever shows.
Things are happening.
Yeah. But it's like, you know, on a stock car, the ECU knows everything. You just change like little things like, oh, we have bigger injectors. But this thing's literally like, we have a motor. And this motor has 4 cylinders.
You want a 10 mil to get the boot off so we can see in there better?
Do what?
Said I'll get the 8 mil so you can get that coupler off.
Oh, yeah, okay.
What was that? Transfer wire TPS or something?
Okay, in this clip, we are realizing that we have a dead pedal. The TPS is showing around 20% or 1 point something voltage, and we are not able to increase that. So after calibrating the throttle pedal and the throttle body multiple times, we realized that there is an interference because when we do the calibration, the throttle body is opening all the way, but when the key is on and we're pushing the pedal, it stays at 20%. So after a little bit of digging, we realized that there is something in Haltech called, under engine functions category, it's called brake pedal check, and you need to have this feature enabled. It basically tells the ECU that if the brake pedal switch is on, the max throttle position is limited to the max braking TPS setting. And this ends up being enabled in order to give you full throttle. So once we made this change, everything was good with the car, and you can see here that it is running and idling perfectly, and we're just going to let the coolant system bleed and prepare for our first test drive.
Is it bad?
It's leaking decent.
Leak a drop now. Fire it up.
Yeah. All right, you probably noticed it's all back together. One of those magic YouTube snaps that we forgot to do. Oil leak ended up being some fluke issue with these being V25 heads that come off of 07 STI Limited. The cam carrier was leaking, which we've never had happen before, and it turns out that the middle bolts don't have shoulder guards on them, so one of them got loose, the bottom of the upper cam gear, and it was leaking down, and it made it look like it was leaking from the timing belt area. So that was kind of annoying. We were able to fix it in the car, luckily, because I really didn't want to take all this out after making it look pretty. So while we were in there, we went ahead and threw the AOS on, which I had to put a mount for. You might have noticed it in the video, but I didn't have the 1-inch down hose on. It's not really needed for startup. It's just for if you happen to fill that expansion tank, or excuse me, if you happen to fill that with oil. And then I added the overflow tank, just a Amazon cheapie, just in case we need some extra capacity. So since we don't have a degas tank, the AOS serves as that purpose now. So I wanted to make sure that you have one of these. You really can't skip those out, or when it cools down, it will pull air into the system, and then it might overheat. So it's done. As you saw in the video, we were able to get this thing to fire up. We restarted it after we fixed the oil leak to make sure there was no more leaks. We didn't record it just because you already saw it start. Steve and Daniel just left to go back to Atlanta, where they live, and we are about to go take this thing for a drive. But we're going to have to make that a new video. So stay tuned. Episode 9 will be out. Nope, episode 9 is this episode. Episode 10 will be us deciding that rather than just driving this around, we're just going to go ahead and drive it all the way to Atlanta to Steve's house. Hopefully it goes good, and you'll find out next episode. Subscribe and like, and check out Instagram and YouTube and all that jazz. Thanks.
200. It went up to like 2 or 3 and then dropped.
Oh.
So it's probably about where it needs to be. Let's see what we got for an oil leak.